What's that train going over the Sydney Harbour Bridge? Stay tuned. Welcome back to the channel. In this special episode, we're going to complete the Down Under scenario for Railway Empire. We're going to use the engineer to support us in this endeavour. And remember, if you like what you see, hit that subscribe to support me to achieve my first 1,000 subscribers. So our first 3 tasks: 2 cities, 3 rural businesses and a population target of 55,733 people in the network. Why that number? Anyway, I like to start connecting my towns using the train stations that have signals. This takes out the extra pressure of managing specific platforms. Next, after connecting your tracks, make sure you add your signals. Take the time to double check your signals are set up correctly. Next, we're adding a warehouse, and as you can guess it, it's got signals, as we're going to connect our 3 rural businesses into this warehouse. So after setting our warehouse up and connecting our tracks, you guessed it, it's signal time again, making sure they match the rest of our network. On to connecting our first rural business, Norris Fisheries. Again, I'm using the station with signals as this is going to be a very busy station. After adding tracks, then we're going to double check our signals to ensure they match the rest of the network. We can now set up our trains, ensuring we set the minimum number of rail cars from the fisheries to 8, which is the maximum you can connect. Our next rural business is to connect Kelly Manor grain farm, and we're going to send the tracks between the hilly area, as this is going to be our backbone of the network, looping back into our warehouse. As we're using the engineer as a support, we need to take advantage of his free maintenance buildings and install them at each of our train stations, not forgetting to connect our first 2 cities together with normal trains. Nearly a year later, we can afford to connect our 3rd rural business, Allen Chop. Then, after checking our signals are correctly aligned, we can go ahead and create our new routes, making sure, like the last 2 businesses, that we have only got full freight trains on our network. A little tip to improve your cash flow early in the game would be to duplicate your route from the start, and when they've arrived at their first destination, duplicate them again, but then delete the empty train. So it now takes an in-game 10 months to achieve the 3rd task, and our next assignment is to build a settlement. After much testing, I finally settled, pardon the pun, on Swan Hill because it gives us access to 2 more resources that are needed early game. That's cattle and sugar. So due to our bank balance, I chose to only build a small train station, and I'll upgrade it later. We now have 4 new tasks. We need to deliver just under 2 full train loads of beer, grain, seafood and wood. Our beer is coming from Melbourne. As this is coming from city, we need to restrict what else this train can load, otherwise it will ship passengers and mail to the new town. Once we created the route, we need to clone it, so that this route and train can jump the queue for many other trains, and we can get these goods shipped out as fast as we can. We can then create our routes from our rural businesses, with the same process. Our grain from Manor Farm, our seafood from Nora Fisheries, and our wood from Allen Chopping. 10 game months later, the first load to be fully completed was our grain, followed very closely by the wood. In preparation for Swan Hill settlement being turned into a town, we're going to upgrade our warehouse to accept the additional resources, including beer, as we're going to need to build up our stocks of the specific commodity. After 2 in-game years, Swan Hill becomes a town, and we can start to cash in on those newly acquired commodities. With the cattle ranch, we've got to start again with a small train station because of our cash balance, but also we're going to need to make a slight adjustment to our network to accommodate the shipping of meat once we set up our routes. Looking at our next task, we're going to need to spend some money to be able to access the Victoria East Territory. We can ignore the final 8 city task, as that will be achieved through normal gameplay. 3 game years later, we have enough capital to expand into the East Victoria area. Only a measly $250,000. Our next task is to set up a new settlement in the newly acquired territory of Victoria East, called Walhalla, as there's gold in those hills which we need to mine. And that will be our following task. I'm using a signal train station again, as we want to build up this town, and we have the finances from the start. We're going to repeat our settlement routine and arrange for 2 train loads of each of the required commodities. This time, we have enough grain in our warehouse, so we can send those trains from there. Throughout the game, we get bonus tasks, and we've just had one to connect Miller Fisheries to our network. This will replace the need to bring seafood from Norris fisheries, at the same time giving us a connection bonus of just under $142,000. While waiting for Walhalla to become a town, we can take this time to review our network, upgrading stations where necessary, and as Melbourne is currently our second largest town, we need to invest in here. So reviewing our current tasks assignments, we need to connect a gold mine and ship 40 loads of gold to Melbourne. So we can start to plan these routes for the network in preparation for gaining access to that area. Again, 3 in-game years and Walhalla becomes a town, which means we can get on and connect the gold mines to our network and start shipping gold. Another tip when you are waiting for your slow tasks to complete, don't just leave the game running. Investigate your town's requirement. What size are they? Are they growing? If not, what do they need? By focusing on getting your core towns built up, it will make future tasks easier. And one of the later tasks is to have 2 towns with at least 80,000 population. So we're aiming for that from the very early on. 3 game years later, and we're able to complete our task. We've had the 40 gold delivered to Melbourne. The next 3 tasks are going to require some substantial investments. We need to access the New South Wales. This costs just short 600,000. A finance tip. When using bonds, don't just wait for them to come to term. Pay them off early, and as your company increases in value, you'll be able to take out larger bonds and therefore increase your capital substantially. This enables us to purchase the rights to build in New South Wales coast, and we have enough money to start this phase of the expansion. Our next task is to establish another town in Armidale. This is not going to be easy, as this town is at the very top of the territory, and we need to connect 4 additional towns on the way: Wollongong, Sydney, Newcastle and Port Macquarie. We set up Wollongong as we head for Sydney. We install another warehouse at Sydney so that we can start connecting our rural businesses for the area. We bring in Mason's Fisheries for the seafood, bring in Cook Cattle for meat, and then we connect up Thomas Clearing for our wood. Newcastle is our next target, quickly followed by Port Macquarie, as our only grain business is past Armidale, so it makes sense to make short work of this expansion. We're now in a position to connect Armidale to our network. We pick up another connection bonus from Lopez Fisheries to assist in this expansion and to finish the rail network to Armidale. After setting our trains in motion, we can connect to Stephen's Grain Farm, as this is the 3rd commodity to connect to Armidale. 5 years after entering into New South Wales coast, we establish Armidale, which opens up the gold mine, which we can now use to deliver gold to Sydney. While waiting for the gold to be delivered, we take the opportunity to connect Johnson Estates and build a rum distillery in Sydney, as later in the game we're going to need to produce rum for Newcastle. Halfway to delivering the gold, we get 3 more tasks: access New South Wales Central, a new settlement in Orange, and an annual profit of $650,000, which we achieve quite quickly. It takes us another year to finally get Orange connected to our network and to complete the gold deliveries. No sooner than we complete these tasks, we get 3 more. Connect the network to Brisbane in the north and Adelaide to the far east, along with 5 more towns. The first new town I'm going for is Bendigo, as this will give me access to wine and an additional wood source. I added a warehouse onto this town and supply directly to it as before, including meat and sugar for future growth. As soon as this is fully supplied and converted, we can connect Smith Farm and start shipping wine through our network. The second town I'm going for is Deliveries, as this will give me access to veggies and another cattle for meat source. While Deliveries is being supplied, my next target is the Queensland coast area. At just short of $1 million, it's a steep investment, and we can continue our network up to Brisbane, which achieves that target. Very quickly, Deliveries is converted and we can connect the veggies at Parker Estate. Then we're looking at our next settlement. It's Dobbo, as it gives us access to wool, which will be needed a lot through the rest of this game. So, while Dobbo is being supplied, we can focus our attention on South Australia territory. At just over $1 million, we can then extend our network to Adelaide. We need to build up the resources around Adelaide, as it would be very difficult to supply it properly from our existing rural business network. As our towns are growing, we need to connect Malone Fruit Farm near the town of Orange into the network, as this will be supplying a number of our towns. The fourth new settlement is Wagga Wagga, as this is going to give us access to iron ore, which we'll need for one of the final tasks, along with a few more duplicate resources. Our fifth settlement is in Pinaroo near Adelaide, which gives us access to our second supply of veggies, which will be needed on a later task. In January of 1863, we finish establishing the 5 towns, and we have 3 new tasks. Deliver 200 wool to Brisbane, which we've just gained access to the farm near Dubbo, so we'll connect that through. Then we have 200 loads of lumber to Adelaide. Now we've built a lumber mill in Pinaroo and connect that to the wood supply just east of Adelaide. Then we have 200 rum. We build a distillery in Sydney and then ship the sugar from Johnston Estates near Port Macquarie down to Sydney, and then the rum to Newcastle. In January of 1875 we complete these deliveries and receive more challenges. The first task of 2 cities with a population of 80,000 gets completed immediately. Then we have 3 produce tasks and 1 transport tasks. I emphasise the produce as this was something I missed and wasted a number of game years trying to work out. As I missed the produce part of these tasks, I first focus on delivering the 20 cement to towns, which I need a new settlement for, Cobar, which gives us access to coal for making chemicals which can then be used in newspapers, and cement. I follow the pattern of building a warehouse for the resources to all be shipped into. I next focus on the 30 loads of railamite and set up a new warehouse at Pinaroo and build a food processing plant in the town, which I then connect Parker Estates Veggies Farm to before sending trains from all towns that produce beer, therefore have the available yeast from, to make the railamite. Once Colbot is established, I can connect up the cement works and start shipping this directly to towns. Then we need to connect up to our coal plant so that we can actually ship this to Wollongong, which has a chemical factory in there, which can then ship those chemicals to Walhalla, that has the publishing facility in there, to make our newspapers, which we can then ship to our other towns. As everything is now en route, we can focus on preparing the next tasks. So, a second warehouse is built at Cobalt, and we purchase a steel plant to start making steel. Then a second warehouse is built in Sydney, and we set that up to accept steel and cement. After realising what I did wrong, I then purchased the publishing business out of Walhalla and the 2 clothing manufacturers so that we can achieve this task. Once purchased, it's not long before we complete the last 2 tasks, and we're faced with the final 3. As we've already started shipping cement and steel to Sydney, we're already well placed for these 2 tasks. The one that's going to take a while is establishing Canberra and getting it to a population of 60,000. We now go overboard to get Canberra set up with building 2 warehouses so that we can supply it with all the goods the city will need to get to 60,000 as fast as it can. As beer is our slowest commodity, I build a brewery in Canberra to supply its own demand while using the surplus grain. So all that's left now is to wait for Canberra to reach the population target of 60,000 with all these trains that are being delivered. We finished the Sydney Harbour Bridge in 1890. Let's have a look. I think we deserve a closer look, don't you? So nearly there with population, and then this.
Now Canberra is prepared to take on the role of the new capital. We've come a long way, and finally we've reached our goal.
So thank you for watching, and if I've earned your subscription, hit that subscribe for the next DLC, Civil War.